Hello, everyone. My name is Ryan Kelly. I'm the clinical lead of youth programs at Talkspace, and I am here today with Dan Walsh, who will introduce himself in a second. We are doing a presentation around integrating performance management for youth rowers, and we're going to speak about balancing your sport, your academics, and your mental health. And I'd like to turn it over to Dan to introduce himself and share a little bit.
Ryan, thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me. I appreciate Talkspace. It was so wonderful to see your tent at Youth Nationals and know that you're providing these services to young athletes. And as a huge advocate of mental health, using it myself and trying to create more safe environments for athletes to feel like they can ask for mental health, I really appreciate you having me here today.
Thank you, Dan, so much. Throughout the presentation, I'm going to share some important things that you all should know about just balancing everyday stressors of being a youth rower and being a youth in general. And Dan is going to help me through this journey and answer some questions and give some advice as well. We're really excited for that. So when we're looking at rowing and understanding how you guys work, we understand that there's different challenges. Teen athletes often have demands around training schedules, around travel, around your meets that you have to attend to. You can't find enough time to study, complete assignments. You have to know how to rest as well. There's also this very important question of, am I a student first or an athlete? And then also the emotional development and the dual pressures of that can affect your mental health and your self-esteem. So when we're looking at understanding these challenges, we as professionals and within the mental health field, we look at the three pillar model. So when I am working with any of my athletes, especially anyone within rowing, the three pillar model incorporates performance, academics, and mental health. This is a holistic framework designed to support the development and sustainability of student athletes. But each pillar um, basically has to be reinforced with each other. So we don't want to put so much on academics. We don't want to just focus on mental health. We want to focus it all together. If one pillar is neglected, the entire structure becomes unstable. So the first pillar that we're going to focus on is performance management. And I want to actually start by asking Dan, what are some of your performance management strategies that have been successful for you?
Oh man, that is such a fantastic question. And just to be really clear, I mean, Ryan, you and I have spoken before and we met, is I do joke around that I emotionally peaked in high school. I decided that I wanted to be an Olympian when I was 15 years old. And watching that 96 Olympics, and I am dating myself, coming across the screen, I said, I want to do that. And so I think I had this idea of being the best of the world at a really young age. And I think with that came a lot of the things that you addressed in the beginning, where the anxiety comes from, that pressure, the desire to be the best, having all of these ideas about college. And I think also just for me, I was an under-resourced youth. So, knowing that rowing can be an affluent sport and that there's certain ways that, like, I always joke around that money is the number one performing enhancing drug out there. Um, I really do know the anxiety and the pressure of having to be the full package. And I think one of the first things that I learned, and I think this comes from having a family that had drug and alcohol addiction on either side, was going to like Al-Anon meetings and AA meetings. You saw the collective of the group that was going through it together. And I think that one of the things as a coach that I've seen is I really make sure that the athletes first and foremost have their friends in their both in the boat but outside their boat so they have perspectives. For me, it was really important. I have two really good friends that I've been friends with since middle school that were with me along this journey that really knew the authentic me. So as this athlete was starting to develop, and I love your three pillars, like it's academics, it's athletics, It's about making sure that your authentic self still has a place to exist, as well as this new self that's developing, this highly competitive person that wants to achieve and wants to use the sport as a pathway to something new. So I think that I love that you have those pillars, and I've having that space for my authentic self outside of rowing was really important for me. And I'm glad I learned that lesson early in my career.
Thank you so much, Dan, for sharing that. One of the things that we've also learned that while meeting rowers and understanding rowing, um, some of the strategies that we see that a lot of the rowers that you, Dan, probably know better than anyone is being able to track your workload, being able to understand your developmental focus, the quality over quantity, so shorter focus sessions, if you have time constraints, recovery protocols and how important this is to your performance, and then coach communication, regular check-ins to adapt training to academic stress periods, usually around when like exams are due or major projects. We need to make sure that our performance management is also about that communication, which is really important. So the second pillar that we're going to focus on is the academic support. And the challenges that you all face as students is that we also all, on top of having demanding training sessions, we find it hard to just time manage. We find it really difficult to be able to keep up with your physical and mental fatigue. Scheduling conflicts. Do you have class early in the morning, but you're supposed to have a rowing session in the morning? Do you have late night practices, but have to, again, study for that chem test or write a paper? The social sacrifices that you all give up. Being able to go out with friends, being able to connect with your other peers, like Dan was saying, outside of rowing. That's really important. But then also the pressure to excel. How you excel for your club team, if you row for your school, if you are rowing to become that that Olympic athlete, the pressures that we have can also be the challenges that you all are facing within your academics. So in order to balance this schoolwork and the sport of rowing, having an effective time management, creating a detailed schedule, prioritizing schoolwork and practice sessions helps keep both on track. Again, going back to that communication, talking with teachers and coaches about conflicts can lead to flexible arrangements and extra support. Really prioritizing on those rest and recovery days of how you do your downtime. What do you do outside of rowing that brings you some joy, that brings you some rest? And looking for those support systems, your family, seeking tutors if you need it, counselors, your teammates, your coaches, anyone that you feel that can kind of just take that pressure off you a little bit is extremely important. Now, the benefits of being both a student and an athlete, the things that we have seen over time and within research, student athletes have great discipline, and you guys do have probably better time management than most. We have improved physical and mental health. You understand the importance of teamwork and leadership. You understand scholarship and career opportunities. You're working to push not for just to be the best rower at times, you're being the best student. You're looking for the best opportunities outside of school. You have really great resilient and goal setting skills that are very important. So we also, sorry, I went backwards. Um, we also want to understand that, again, going into the third pillar around mental health and emotional well-being. And before I talk about this slide, I want to prompt Dan again to share with us what are some of the positive mental health techniques you could add to your rowing routine.
Thank you again, Ryan. And you nailed it on the head. If you're a rower, you're already extremely special as an athlete. Um, it's a very unique sport, and it is a really, as I like to define it, chosen symbiosis. You are functioning as a higher organism when you get into a boat. And the bigger the boat, so if you go from the single all the way out to the eight, that complexity of that team pressure really manifests. And so I think one of the really cool things to do is when you feel like you're isolated in that moment where you feel like you're the odd cog in the machine, is to know that even the best athletes, the best rowers will feel that. It's actually part of the pressure that shows that you care, that you don't want to let your team down, you don't want to let your coach down. And so one of the skills that I try and teach my young athletes when I work with them is when to communicate that personal need against the team's need. And so at the beginning of all of my team sessions, very beginning of the year, and by the time someone's a senior, they've heard this now hopefully 4 times, is if you're going to ask me a question in front of the team for what's best for the team, it is my job to look at the holistic health of the entire team. But that does not mean you don't have individual needs. Those conversations for your individual needs, let's go have a conversation away from the team because your individual needs are as important to me as the team's. But
Mhm.
you, as the young athlete, need to make sure that you can separate those two. And so I train them from very early on to understand that if you're going to talk about going to prom in front of the team, my response as a coach is prom doesn't matter. Winning matters. Because for the team, some people there do want to win more than they want to go to prom. But
Mhm.
for you, if it's really important for you to go to prom because your parents didn't get to go and they really want to see you have this experience, then let's talk about it one on one. Let's find out why that is emotionally feeling like a weight versus a joy. And I think that's one of the things that we try to really work on in my programming is where are you choosing to find joy in the struggle, understanding that there is no linear path. It's not. There's waves, there's ups and downs, there's ebbs and flows. And so what we're here to do is find out that make sure that if you're in the trough of your wave, let's understand why so we can get you out of it. And that comes from having clear communication with both yourself, with your coach, and then eventually you have to bring that to your teammate because ultimately you're going to find out that once you tell your teammates what your needs are, they're more receptive to it than you think. It's when
Mhm.
you want to try and pretend that you're more stoic than you are that this ton of negative feedback loop starts to come into you, and then you feel isolated. And that's why we're here to help, is to show you that there are tools that get you into that upward spiral versus down.
Yeah. I also think, Dan, that you brought up a really good point. Being able to also talk to your team about the mental health, whether it's a challenge or just the mental health that you are feeling, how you show up that day really impacts them, but it could also influence and encourage someone else to have that hard conversation and understand that maybe they didn't know the words that they had to explain how they felt, and their teammate helped them be able to maybe give them the push to come and talk to you next, which I think
Absolutely.
is also really
Absolutely. Yeah, when I do team talks, when I go and speak to other teams, it's always easy to share a story. I'm very lucky to have a lot of good stories. But I'll always ask from something as simple as a hand raise and to a question of like, who is here suffering from race anxiety? And I raise my hand because I've suffered from it. Um, and you see 1 or 2 hands raised. That courage of just raising your hand, somebody else in that room was feeling it, did not want to raise their hand, saw that you raised your hand, and all of a sudden feels a little bit of relief. And what
Mhm.
I found is so many side conversations happen after that simple question where it processes itself. So I think, be courageous and take a small step into being curious about finding those answers. And so if you suffer from race anxiety, it's okay. It's a spectrum. It's a
Mhm.
spectrum, right? It's some of it is crippling where you can't finish an erg. And some of it's just like I'm at the starting line of the Olympics and I wanted to be here and everybody's watching and I'm in spandex and you just take a deep breath, you
Yeah.
know. But it takes practice, right? It takes practice to, that breath. So I think it all starts with being curious of why you feel the anxiety and then feeling somebody who's just a bit ahead of you with the courage to say, I'm working on it.
Mhm. Thank you so much for that. Um, Before I go into some of the mental health strategies for rowing, um, I'm actually going to do just a very quick run through of this, but then Dan, I have an important question at the end of this for you. Um, so as we listen to Dan speak and as we bring this into how this connects more, we want to normalize mental health skills as a training. We want to integrate self-talk, mindfulness, some box breathing if we need to, um, into regular practice. We want to treat sports psychology sessions just like physical strength or ERG or ERG testing. We want to make sure that we're training the mind like the body, deliberately and consistently. We want to make sure that we're providing nutrients guidance around body image and fueling education. So we want to avoid public weigh-ins if you can. Try to host team workshops on healthy fueling and body respect. We want to make sure that you guys understand, as a rower and as part of a team, what it feels to balance this discipline around your body, around fueling education, how it's important. We also want to make sure that we help you all understand, as we've said throughout the entire presentation, that rest and recovery are productive. Normalize that it's not feeling on every day is okay. It's okay to not be okay. It's okay to begin each team workout with a check-in, with an open-ended question, like, what's one word for how you're feeling today? Or is there anything taking up space mentally? This speaks a lot to maybe if you are a captain on your team, or if you are one of the seniors within your team that other teammates look up to or look up to you for. We want to make sure that you're able to tell your coaches of different things that you want implemented within maybe your team culture. We want to make sure that we're also celebrating resiliency, sportsmanship, consistency, leadership, and improvement, not just medals and split times. We want to make sure that you are also being supported for interest outside of rowing, whether that's really your academics or music or clubs or volunteering. Um, because often mental health support can be looked at as being something that holds you back. But we want to make sure that this is also something that is included and braided into your everyday routine. So, with that being said, I want to allow Dan to share something, and I want to ask him a question of what was his aha moment, or that moment in time that you started your mental health journey.
Man, Ryan, I'm usually the one delivering the hard questions. This is fun. Um, I think it really starts with, I'm 10 years younger than my next sibling, and they're 1, 2, 3 years apart. And so in some ways I was raised by wolves, if you think about it, right? I was in a house full of teenagers. Um, and without going too much into my siblings, dirty laundry, each one of them in a lot of ways had some very extreme teenage experiences. The one that was really highlighted was my brother, was drugs and alcohol, and being involved in like, drug dealing gang. And we also had it with my cousins in Brooklyn, so it was a really rough place to be as a child. Um, and I'm okay, right? Like, I'm not trying to hear, no one should feel sorry for me. Like, I'm Dan Walsh with an Olympic medal and a beautiful family. So it's going to be okay. And I think, first of all, like, that extreme situation, to be here and say it's going to be okay, a lot of that because my brother went into recovery, right? Recovery is a mental health tool.
Mhm.
And I saw that tool help take a monster and remove that monster from my brother. And a lot of the times as a teenager, my mom was very overprotective. She didn't want me to go the way of my brothers and my cousins. So while my brother was in sobriety, to go hang out and see a movie as a teenager, I had to go to an AA meeting.
Mhm.
And that's where I saw real resilience in mental health, right? You see people that are truly suffering with a mental health condition, and that they find this resilience to show up every day
Mhm.
and kind of lean into the hard stuff. So I think I was really exposed to what mental health was at an extreme level. Um, that being said, the idea of being the best still got me,
Mhm.
right? It still got me. And so I think my biggest aha moment was when I went to college at Northeastern and I was a Division I athlete. I also studied sports medicine, athletic training, was a strength and conditioning coach. And so I really love physiology. I also love building people back up. I know that you're not, just because you're broken doesn't mean you are broken as a person.
Mhm.
And I realized that mental health was such a part of that. And so my aha moment really is constant. I'm always amazed that the more that I practice mental health, the more resilient I become.
Mhm.
Just like, and if it's broken, right, your endocrine system, which relegates your emotion, can be injured as much as your ankle can.
Mhm.
So there is no, your brain's an organ, your heart's an organ, your pituitary gland's an organ, your adrenal glands are an organ. So if you're constantly in a adrenal and cortisol state, well, just like your ankle, if it's constantly in a beat up state, will be injured. Well, then your endocrine system will get injured. And having a very comprehensive recovery program where it's all about high improving behavior. So that's the research that I'm doing is on who cares where you are? What's the most simple step you can take today to improve it? Focus on that until you're world class at it, then move on. So it's
Mhm.
actually simplifying it. And I think that's my aha moment with mental health is you just start where you are and you keep it simple and you improve. And what's the smallest margin of improvement? That's all you have to focus on. And that's to me kind of a big esoteric question that you asked me is it's constant. I'm constantly, just like every time I try and push my training or I try a new technical skill, at first it's really clunky, but the more that I commit to these small increments of improvement, next thing you know, I'm world class at it.
Thank you, Dan, so much for sharing that. I think one of the things that I would like everyone to take away from this, and Dan, if you have anything to add, please do so. This is not supposed to be the perfect equation. It's not supposed to be the pillar that's going to fix everything. This is just another tool in your tool belt to use to be able to handle everyday expectations and goals that you set for yourself. And it's not going to be perfect. And like I said before, it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to not have a great day every single second. But how you give yourself grace and how you give yourself love is very important to be able to balance how to handle everything that's being expected of you. And Dan, would you be able to, if you can, just highlight maybe one time where you had to give yourself grace to be able to take a step back during a race or before a race that you really had to say, like, I have to calm myself down before I lose all of it, if that makes sense?
Yeah. Rowing is really tough to do one on one. I think unless you are a single sculler, and even then, you're not truly isolated. You have your coaches and there's other people. I think I am a big fan of the eights just because I think it's such a complex problem. You have so many personalities. But to me, there's three things of why it's really important, just from my perspective, is one, rowing is the sport where there's no coach on the field to play.
Mhm.
And so I think one, coaches have to realize that, and that if the coaches aren't really providing an environment for athletes to feel like it's their hero's journey, then that's the tough thing for the athlete to be on, is they're going to constantly look for that approval from the coach. So I think that one of the big moments that I can say is that I run hot. You can ask any of my teammates. I am very intense. And I think, Ryan, when you and I first met, you were kind of like, oh boy, you know, Coach Walsh is intense. I am, because I have a really good perspective of it all, because I've been in moments where that intensity, that desire to have a perfect day, was removing my joy from the curiosity of what I was able to become. So I suffered from being midway through a PR erg and having all that pressure of, this is going to save my life again. This is going to keep me off the streets. This is going to keep me from going to college. This is going to keep me from my dreams, and quitting and stopping and and getting off the machine, and just failing hard, like in the middle of something good, and dealing with that embarrassment, dealing with that really like, who am I moment.
Mhm.
And I think that I went through my Rolodex of things that went through, which is I have tomorrow, I have right now, I have this moment. I can get back on the machine. All I need to do and improve is just not quit on the next attempt.
Mhm.
Because I got this really lucky perspective from it was actually my wrestling coach who did do strength and conditioning for us. His name's Joe Schnarline. He was also the AP bio teacher and the marine bio teacher. And he was also the entry level bio teacher because he was there to make sure that the kids that weren't perfect had a chance to
Mhm.
learn. And that sports specifically could be another place to excel. And I just remember him simply saying to me, you're making a choice every single stroke to take the stroke or not. So just focus on that one stroke. Do you choose to take it again? And a lot of the stuff that I do now with the imagery coaching, which is to create space, right? Take one breath. And so when I feel that anxiety pick up, whether I'm a workout, whether I'm a parent, whether I'm coaching, whether, man, as a coach, it's the worst. There's no outlet. You have no control. Is I, and I've gotten to I can do one box breath. I
Mhm.
activate my vagus nerve and I'm good from training, right?
Mhm.
My positive self-talk is 2 to 1 now. I need to tell myself twice, like, it's okay. You're in the arena, it's where you want to be. That positive self-talk ratio used to be 20 to 1. Negative self-talk is a lot more powerful. So I've trained myself to get to 2 to 1, but it's always 2 to 1, right?
Mhm.
Negative self-talk is never 1 to 1. So I think that without boring everybody, is I have gotten off a nerve.
Mhm.
Right. I have flipped at the world championships. I have got rejected. I have gotten cut. And what I found is the simpler I make my next step, my next immediate step, the faster that all goes away.
Mhm.
And it's hard, though. It takes training, it takes practice, it takes commitment, and mostly it takes compassion in that I'm human.
Mhm.
And that more that I embrace my humanity, the more superhuman I become.
Thank you so much, Dan. Going into this, we wanted to make sure as we end this webinar that we gave you all some recommended resources. So, um, Dan is going to share some advice that he has for some parents, but we also want to make sure that everyone knows that they have access to Talkspace Go, which is, I explain Talkspace Go as Mental Health 101. It is an app that is created to be able to give you some mindfulness techniques. It gives you journaling prompts. It gives you mental health facts of the day. It also has live and recorded sessions by our licensed providers around all different types of topics that is completely free for any US rowing member. We also wanted to share that there are some books, The Mindfulness Athlete and Rowing Stronger, that are out there that could be really helpful for you all to be able to read, to just feel like you're getting more support from maybe a different perspective. But I want to ask Dan, what advice would you give parents to help their children become elite athletes?
That is one of my favorite questions. And it comes down to three things. Say, I love you. Are you hungry? Do you need a ride? And when I'm challenged on that, I repeat those three things. I love you. Are you hungry? Do you need a ride? And parents, it's not your fault. You genetically and consciously cannot objectively look at your child. If you're a good parent, your child is the best. That's the best in the world. My kids are, right? No one's going to convince me my 2 daughters aren't better than everybody else in the world. I objectively can't think of that. any other way. I'm so subjective in their existence. So I know from my personal experience, the way I coach, the way that I try and help parents through these really difficult teenage years and these also difficult college years, especially if you have an amazing person who decides that they want to be great. The best thing you can do for them is, I love you. Are you hungry? Do you need a ride?
Thank you so much, Dan, for those recommended resources and that recommended advice, because it is extremely important. And I love the way that you were able to sum that up in those three statements that can really impact the day and the mindset of our youth rowers and what they do for their future and how they show up. So I want to end here, and I want to thank Dan so much for joining me in walking through just again some tools and some hopefully important things that you all take away from the 3-pillar model around your academics, your performance management, and your mental health. And we look forward to being able to continue to support US rowing and all of the youth rowing athletes out there. And Dan, would you like to end with any closing comment?
I just think that if you enjoyed this and you feel like you need these mental health resources, or you just want rowing stories, me and my friends, bunch of rowers, we have a show called Metal Factory. It's on YouTube. It's free. And you'll see that there are a lot more people like you out there than you think. And you're not alone. And if you're in rowing, you're already a step ahead of every other sport in becoming the world's best teammate. So good for you for being a rower, and good for you for accepting the challenge, and good for you for stepping up every day and trying to improve. And I really want to thank Talkspace and Ryan for having me today. Thank you.
Thank you so much.